Said, take a look what happened.
Hello and welcome. You're watching One India, the disturbing piece of news coming in from United States as of now. As you would have already gathered, former President Donald Trump has been shot at. Thankfully, he is doing well. He has responded also. And we are now joined by Priety Upala, Director of OneIndia Institute and geopolitical expert. Thank you, Preeti, for taking time out for One India at such a short notice. And welcome to One India.
Namaste, and thank you so much for having me. And hello to your wonderful audience at One India.
Thank you so much. Preeti, what we are hearing from the United States is something that is happening, if my memory serves me well, after Ronald Reagan, an assassination attempt on, a president or a former president. How would US react to this?
You have no idea. I'm actually in Las Vegas at the moment. We just wrapped a political summit, which is basically we are discussing about the elections, having a lot of debates, and then this happens, and this is the realpolitik. This is the actual politics in motion. I have to say, people are horrified. They're shocked. They never expected something like this to happen to their own leaders. Whatever your politics may be, this is abhorrent, it's unacceptable, it must be condemned by everybody. And I think people are just absolutely gobsmacked as to how such a security failure happened. Now, President Trump always has security detail with him, but what went wrong? I mean, how did they take their eye off the ball? He was inches away from possibly being assassinated. This is an assassination attempt. Make no mistake about it. It's not an accident or anything like that. It was a direct target, a direct shooting. He missed by inches. He's a very, very lucky man to even be alive, I think. And his ear was shot off almost, and there's blood all over one side of his face. The scenes are horrific. This is he is in the middle of a political rally in Pennsylvania, I believe. And people are horrified across the country.
Absolutely, Preeti. Cutting across the political lines, both the Democrats and the Republicans have condemned this incident. We have seen a statement from President Joe Biden, and former President Barack Obama, too, was quick to respond to the situation. Preeti, you have been following the United States geopolitics and the political upheavals for quite some time now. When the dust settles, how do you think the political implications of this might have, especially on the upcoming elections?
Well, I'm afraid I don't think this dust will be settling anytime soon. In fact, I think we're going to see sandstorms from now until November, the actual election day. Now, I think we have a situation where at least President Trump, but possibly all potential presidential candidates, now it's their life at stake. So what sort of security is going to be around them? Do they want to do rallies? Will they be allowed to do rallies? We don't know. The news is out that the shooter has been shot down, so he's more. But it's sad because they were not able to interrogate him before that happened to hear from him, who funded him, his motivation, who's behind it. There's different reports coming out. These are such dark days for American democracy, because apart from voter, fraud, electoral integrity, now we have a situation where the candidates, their own lives might not even be safe. And what sort of an election is this? This is supposed to be American people voicing out their what they want for the future of this country and their identity and their patriotism. And this is what we get. I have to say, the only bright silver lining, I would say, is incredible support to President Trump across the board, and everybody condemning it. I think this wins him a lot of sympathy votes for sure. And he miraculously survived, so he will be fine. And I think from that perspective, it might be good for him. I'm just sad that something like this had to happen for people to sort of show that humane side that we are not seeing these days. This is the most polarized election on the planet, and I think this is the last thing anybody wanted.
Right. Preeti, freedom of speech is something that the United States Constitution and also people in general, the politicians in general, hold in high regard. This particular attempt is also being seen as somehow obstructing or trying to silence Donald Trump's rights as a citizen of the United States for freedom of speech. How big a dent do you feel on the whole this to the American Constitution?
I think it's such a dark blot on America and American democracy and the American Republic, because we talk about freedom and democracy and independence, but I mean, what sort of freedom do we really have? I think citizens can't even speak their mind. And I mean, I bet you if this was President Biden in place of Trump, having an assassination attempt on him, I think the whole world would have turned upside down. We're not seeing that. We are seeing some, obviously people are shocked, but you see a strange sort of emergence of interesting comments like, is it staged? Did he do it to himself? Was it done deliberately to get some sympathy? I mean, I can't believe people are going there. I wouldn't rule anything out. It's a very, very sort of dirty politics play just across the board. But even if that's the first thought that you'll have when someone almost got killed, that's not a good place to be. I'm afraid America has lost its soul, its spiritual soul. And I think it needs to find that, and soon, because elections are not that too far away. And I think people are really trying to even ask themselves what sort of a future they want, what sort of a country they want to live in. And this is really not anything that people expected. The Republican convention is days away. People were expecting some kind of radical news, but this is the radical news. I think the next days of next week, the Republican Party, conservatives in this country are in shell shock. And I think they really don't know where to go from here.
Indeed, Preeti, when we talk about the situation which will unfold in sooner than later, if I may say so, the glimpses of what transpired at the Capitol Hill a few years back also come to our memories. And thousands and thousands of miles away here in India too, the impact, the assessment is palpable. Are we going to see something of that sort unfolding on US streets?
Ooh, I hope this is not going to be a deadly, bloody election. Certainly it's polarized. The vitriol is very high. There's a lot of hateful talk around people, politics, their presidential preferences. And it's fine if it's just limited to discussion, but when it start taking law into their own hands, I am afraid that come November, I don't know what's going to unleash, and either side loses. I think there's factions, fringes of both sides that are willing and capable of being violent out on the streets. We have seen violence from both sides in the past, and I think both are capable of it. And this, what happened, is a proof that it can happen from the left, the far left. So we have to be very careful. I think, unfortunately, it's going to have to be very, very tight security leading up to the election, the final rallies. I think you need almost that glass casing that we saw when Trump had visited India with Prime Minister Modi. There were, the Indian security is actually top notch compared to this. You don't let them, there's always complete security. The eye is never off the ball. Everybody's looking, making sure everything's kosher. But I have to say, another point, there are reports coming out that Trump had been asking for beefed up security in the last few weeks and more backup, more resources to the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, which is responsible for this. And apparently that was refused. I don't know if these reports are true or not, but I think if they were refused, I don't like the sound of that, because it is a presidential candidate, a former president. He is owed that, I think, from the state, and you can't refuse someone when they feel their own security is vulnerable. And now that we've seen this, I honestly don't know what sort of security he's going to have, but it's going to have to be quadruple what he has right now, because clearly what he has right now is not enough.
Right. Preeti, one final question before I let you take care of, or rather, what I believe a long evening, Saturday evening there in the United States. Two things come to mind. Post 9/11, United States had definitely beefed up its security, both the homeland and its borders as well. Barring the Boston bombing, there were not any other attempt, thankfully, on anyone in the US, be it a high personality as Donald Trump. Does this, once again, this particular incident, bring back the gun culture back in focus, which Donald Trump apparently was in support of?
Absolutely. I think this the gun advocates would say, see, I mean, we wish even people in the rally had guns. They would have prevented this, or they would have, I mean, come, you know, all these thoughts are going to arise at a time when gun control is one of the most polarized debates you can have. It is a constitutional right. I understand that it is meant for the citizen to protect himself from the tyranny of the state. So in case the state turns on you, you get to defend yourself, which is very important. But obviously people use that all the time. We have so many mass shootings, which is not related to the state at all. Unfortunately, this discussion is going to now really get amped up. I think both the NRA, who are advocating for even more sort of gun rights, plus the anti-gun lobbies, they're both going to amp up their message. Each will have their own point of view. And it's, you know, I mean, the anti-gun folks would say, well, if they were banned, this shooter wouldn't get access to it. And the other team would say, well, more people had it, maybe he might not even dared, or we would have caught him just before he we could see it in action, in motion. So apart from the election issues, now we have the gun problem. I mean, we have this poly issues, let's say, poly crisis going on here, and they're all just as hot as the other. This is going to be a very long, ugly, drawn out election. And quite frankly, I think there are people who just don't even want to be in the country when this election is happening and the results are announced, because we don't know what is going to unfold.
We certainly don't know what is going to unfold, Preeti. And as I said, a long, long evening awaits you, and not just you, but your fellow Americans also, at a time when United States, obviously a free country, a free world that it promises, now needs to take a hard look at what has transpired. Whether it was staged or not, whether the gun culture would come back into focus, that remains to be seen. Priety Upala, their director of OneIndia Institute and geopolitical expert, joining us here on OneIndia. Preeti, we really appreciate your time and input.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Don't miss out. Follow OneIndia for real-time updates.